What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Major Mixtape podcast. I'm your host, Jason. Hope you're doing well whenever and wherever you are watching or listening this. Now, on the show today, I'm excited because if you're a listener to the show, you know that I'm a Harem Scarum fan. And joining today is the guitarist from Harem Scarum, Pete Lesperance. Pete, welcome to the show. How you doing, man?
Thanks, Jason. I'm doing really good, man. No complaints at all. I mean, other than, everyone's complaint, which is just the state of things currently. But, that being said, everything's all right.
Let's start right there, actually, because 2020 rolls around and you release the Change the World album. And as you guys are about ready to start doing some shows, everything shuts down. So how has the last year and a half been for you?
Well, in all honesty, the last year and a half for me has been good. Work-wise, Harem Scarum is really part of what we do. You know what I mean? Obviously, Harry and I in particular, I guess. And I'm doing a lot of producing and playing on all kinds of stuff for people. And because of COVID, my whole vibe was remote anyway. I hook up with producers and I play on they call me, hire me, I play on their stuff and I send it back to them. I was kind of doing that already. And oddly enough, well, I guess not oddly enough, but when COVID hit, everybody was doing even more of that. So I actually kind of got busier with that stuff. It was really unfortunate timing for the Scarum record. We were pretty proud of that. And it came out, and I think it came out in the beginning of March, 2 weeks before they shut everything down. And so that died a instant death that way, like everybody's. We're all going through the same thing. It's a crazy time to be an artist, and you just got to do what you can do and try to keep it going on,
Now, during the last year and a half, I noticed a couple of videos that you were involved in, just some of those, quarantine covers. There was the one with Rockin' in the Free World. There's another one of Don't Stop Believing. So to be involved in some of those larger, very collaborative projects, how was that for you?
It was cool. It was really fun. I mean, we're in a situation right now. I'm currently being managed by Bill Miller from Sharp 9 Music, and Bill's got a team of producers. So he's managing a team of producers as well as managing my band, Smoke and Ashes. But he manages a team of producers. And so we did what we called, I don't remember what it was called now, but it was based on that. It was all of us collaborating and getting together and playing on each other's stuff. And then we'd bring in the artists that we were working with. So, I mean, it was great. It was a really good time. It's the guys that kind of we work with anyway. So it was kind of just a way we could continue doing what we're doing and just throw something out into the world that we thought was fun and cool. And yeah, just kind of keep the ball rolling,
Now, Harem Scarum is currently working on your 16th studio album. How is that coming along? And to sit there and hear 16th studio album, because this is actually 30 years ago this year that first album came out. Did you think back in 1991 that, you'd still be here 16 albums 30 years later?
You could probably come full stop to did I think in 1991. We had no idea that we were going to be fortunate enough to even have any kind of fan base, which we still do somehow around the world. And it's not huge, but it keeps us going. They keep us going. And it's tricky. The Harem Scarum thing is tricky. I'm not going to lie. And Harry and I are in the midst of working on writing for it right now. And it's kind of always the same situation. It really comes down to the songs and what we end up with. And until we're happy, there is no record. And right now we're just not at that spot. You know what I mean? I think the COVID thing has drained a lot of people in a lot of ways. I think we were kind of impacted somewhat, even if we don't realize it, by the fact that we just worked really friggin' hard on a record. It came out and the whole world changed again, for everybody. But in our case, I mean, it's just been difficult, and we've moved on in so many ways onto other things. And, Scarum is something that we only want to do if we can continue it at the level that we think we have left it at. You know what I mean? And unless the next record can compete with, in our opinion, the work we've done in the last couple, we're not gonna bother making one, to be totally honest. So right now, truthfully, it's kind of up in the air. We're working on it. I wouldn't say diligently, but we are working on it. We're trying to pull it together.
But one of the things you have been working on recently, as you mentioned earlier, is Smoke and Ashes. Now, to anyone who hasn't actually heard Smoke and Ashes, what is that group?
Smoke and Ashes is Aaron Allen. He's a country music singer from London, Ontario. It's himself and me, and it's a country duo, is what it is, country rock duo, I would say. And we just put out our first single in July. Softly. We just put it out on Spotify. Got some nice playlisting from Apple Music. They were very supportive, and it's gone well for. Again, the stage we're at. We just put out another single, which was basically just to kind of get us through the holidays. We wanted to put up some more stuff for people just to kind of get a feel of this, because they've heard one song. But we have like a 7-song EP ready to go. So I'm just finishing mixing it right now, and we're going to be figuring out what to do with that in the new year. So there will be playing. We're going to put a band together. We've got a killer band in mind. The guys that played on the record are literally some of my favorite musicians in the country. So it's really fun. It's really kind of what I'm into at the moment, for sure.
Now, with Smoke and Ashes, you also just released a cover of My Back Door.
Yeah,
when it comes to cover songs, what is it about the song that makes you want to kind of take it and make it your own?
Well, for me, I mean, that song was just—it's funny. It's on my list here, but it's just one of those songs. Ever since I was a kid, I think it was on one of my dad's workout tapes. A bunch of my early influences came from that sort of thing, like the first music I listened to, right? So it was one of those songs, and I've just always loved. I love CCR. There's something about their vibe. They have this loose, fun kind of thing, and I don't have that in any of my music, really. So I really just always loved the tune and wanted to update it. And the thing I'm doing with Aaron, it just felt perfect for it. Aaron loves the song. He does it all the time. He felt like it, really represented the kind of music he was into as well. So we just thought it'd be a great thing to revamp and throw out.
Now, that transition from Harem Scarum, which is, hard-hitting, really good melodic rock, to country may seem like a bit of a jump to some, but for you, it's not that much, because if memory serves, in 2012, you joined Michelle Wright's band. How did that come about?
I was a good friend of mine, Brad Stella. I was playing a band with him called the Stellas, and Michelle was looking for a guitar player. She was going on a tour across the country to do songs from the Hall tour. It was her induction into the Hall of Fame here, and she was looking for kind of a rock style. I don't know. I think the quote was like a Keith Urban-esque kind of guitar player, like a country guy, but rock. And by that point, I was super into country guitar. Like, I was playing it all the time. It was a whole new world to me, and like, it's incredible. Like the musicianship in that style of music, for a couple guys in particular, like, it's unbelievable playing. So it was really fun, and it was my first opportunity to kind of do something like that. So I jumped at the chance. Obviously, Michelle is a royalty, and I love her to pieces. She's like a very good friend, and she was very sweet to me the whole time. It was my first time really to be out there in the country world, and she made me super comfortable. The whole band did. It was a great experience for me, and really opened up my mind to what I really kind of, where I maybe wanted to start going.
If you listen to some of those Harem Scarum albums, you hear a very distinct, very definitive guitar sound and almost a guitar personality. In switching over to country, did you feel like you had to change anything the way you play, or at least the style, or at least your approach to it?
Well, no. I mean, I think the bounds are a little bit different, and it's weird. I mean, I've learned a lot of instruments over the last 10 years, and I kind of approach them all the same way. I sort of start to learn the basics. I learn a song or two or whatever, and then I've been playing guitar for 40 years now or whatever. So you have a musical sensibility within you. That's the way you see music. It's not that's the way I see guitar. That's the way I see dobro. That's the way I see this. That's the way I hear music. So instantly, as soon as my hands can start doing what I want them to do, I don't really care what else is going on out there. The music, I just want to make the music I hear. So, it was a change to get into some of the new techniques, just a different sound. Obviously, you're not playing with all that distortion and sustain, and it's a bit of a different animal that way, which is really good for your playing, frankly. A lot of rock guys rely on that a lot, especially these days. That's not really fair to say. Everybody always did. I did. Everyone does. And it's really a lot easier to play when you're gained up like crazy. The cleaner you get, the trickier it gets, especially when you're still trying to play really super intricate stuff. So But yeah, it was amazing for my playing, I think. I mean, in my headspace, at least it opened a whole new door for me. I was just feeling like it was over, you know, like I was kind of out of tricks in a way.
If you go back to listen into your solo album, Fade Into Stars, it was your second solo album, you could kind of hear some of that country influence. And of course, that's also around the time when you joined Michelle Wright's band. So was that, you know, listening to country and more kind of jumping into that world, did that kind of influence some of the songwriting around that time?
Yeah, I think completely. I think my whole headspace was shifting, you know. The Harem Scarum thing, we keep it going. It is what it is. It exists as it exists. But as a musical person, I made a shift out of that style of music in my own mind a long time ago. You know what I mean? Like years ago. So I think it was definitely an opportunity for me to start pursuing a different side of myself as an artist, whatever that means. But yeah, I mean, I wrote one of the songs when I was in Nashville. I mean, you know, it kind of definitely affected it. Definitely.
You mentioned you've been doing a lot of session work, and there've been appearances on, you know, Bree Taylor was a recent guest on the podcast on her song Kryptonite, Brie Lawrenson, Terea. So when you're asked to guest on someone else's album, is that more pressure to you because, you know, you're now being asked to contribute to somebody else?
Not really. I mean, the way I'm kind of used to that. That's really kind of feels more like my job than anything. I am more of a studio musician / producer than I'm guitar player for Harem Scarum, you know? So that's pretty much the day job. So I love being involved, and it usually comes from producers. It's not like artists reach out. I work with a lot of great producers, and they call me when they need me. And we, you know, it's not pressure. It's just the way we work. It's just the way we work now. And I love being involved in other people's stuff and trying to bring something to it, you know, that elevates it somehow if I can. And, yeah.
And you've been doing a little bit of production work. And I'm just curious because you mentioned that you've been learning a lot more, you know, instruments, you know, the dobro is there. And there's anyone who's watching this on YouTube can see like the row of instruments on the wall behind you. But how much of that now affects when you go into production? Do you find yourself thinking, oh, I could put this here and put this here and just add more layers to it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, all the instruments I've learned in the last years, they're all country related. So it's what people call me for, either banjo or dobro or whatever, mandolin, maybe. I mean, guitar. It's all just, that's the world I'm working in these days. I'm not doing session work in the rock world because there really isn't much. Country thing is where that kind of thing is really happening still. So.
What to you is the hardest part? Is it the actual performance, or is it the, you know, getting around the idea of like, you know, I can put so much into it, but, you know, you don't want to put too much into it?
No, you know, I don't find any of it hard, to be totally honest. The songs ask for what they want. You know what I mean? They really do. When I hear a song, a stripped down version, acoustic vocal, and it's probably because I hear it all in my head because I know what I'm going to do, and it all just starts to come together. I just start layering things, and it needs this, and the next thing you know, it's done, kind of thing. So in a way, it kind of happens. It just happens. The song asks for the parts it wants. I know it sounds so flaky. I love it, but it's true, man. I don't know how else to say it, you know?
When Smoke and Ashes put out their first single, High on Sunday, it was welcomed quite happily. One of the artists of the month at the CMA Ontario. When you put something new out there, you know, completely new, like just a new entity, and it gets accepted like that, how satisfying is that for you?
It's horrifying, you know, even when it goes marginally well. It's yeah, man. It's crazy being the artist. I'm very comfortable doing what I do for other people. When you really got to put yourself out there, and especially the singing thing, it's a tough one for me, but it is very rewarding, and I'm happy that some people are digging it and it's going in the right direction. And I'm mostly looking forward to kind of putting a band together and getting out there and being able to play again, because that's something, especially being in Harem Scarum, I haven't done a whole lot of in my life, not nearly as much as I wish I had.
You mentioned the singing thing, and you have said in interviews past that that was kind of a hurdle to get over, even though Harem Scarum is known not just for the hooks and the riffs and the songs, but a lot for the vocal harmonies. And of course your 2 solo albums, you were right up front there. Is that one of the things you approach not necessarily more with trepidation?
Well, it's just a completely different animal. It's and it's your ego is so heavily involved, and I hear everything, right? I'm a producer and I hear every single thing. So I know how bad I am when I'm bad. And, I know how I feel about my voice, and it's difficult. Everybody has a hard time with their voice. And some of the best singers in the world, which I'm clearly not, but some of the best singers in the world can't stand their own voices. So that makes it tricky. I'm not going to lie. That does make it tricky, but my want to do it and my want to express myself that way kind of overrides my timid side, or, whatever you want to call that, whatever scares the hell out of me about being a singer.
I want to go back to a show that happened probably about, I think it was on the United tour, and Harem Scarum playing at the Oshawa Music Hall, but you had broken your wrist, and Mike Vasos had to come in and pick up the guitar. How weird was that to not be playing, but to kind of be on the side and watch Harem Scarum play, without you being able to play?
Yeah, it was super cool to be able to see the band from that perspective. And Mike's a great, awesome player. You probably know Mike. He's a fantastic guitar player. So he did an unbelievable job, and he had very little time to do it, because I broke my arm. I don't even remember how long it was, but it was not a long time before that show. And it was interesting. I mean, obviously I missed being up there and playing, and I wish, because we don't play enough, right? So when we play, it's an exciting time for me. I love that. So that was a drag, but it was cool to get to see the rest of the guys up there doing it and go, oh, that's what Harem Scarum looks like. That's interesting. It's kind of a different perspective who gets to see their band on stage, right?
One of the things that always baffled me being a Harem Scarum fan was that, here you are, a Canadian band, and it felt like Japan was paying more attention to Harem Scarum at the time. How odd was that, being a Canadian band and almost being more embraced there? And what was Canadian radio missing the boat on in some of those middle, almost pre-rubber albums?
Well, in all honesty, I don't necessarily think they were missing anything. I mean, they had just moved on from the kind of music that we were still playing. It's just the way things go. Everything's cyclical, and it moved out of the rock thing. And to be totally honest, rock was getting pretty bad by then, and most of the bands were getting pretty bad by then. And unfortunately, we got lumped in with a lot of that. And, but I get it. I get why we weren't on the radio here. It was interesting the way things went down. And in hindsight, I'm kind of glad, because it made our whole careers turn out differently. I think it gave us longevity that we wouldn't have had if we had been toast of the town and the label's favorite thing, done really well, and then got dumped on our first record. I don't think things that would have been, I don't think we'd be talking about this 30 years down the line. So I'm kind of glad the way it all worked out, to be totally honest. It was cool to be able to go to other parts of the world every year and travel and play for lots of people, and, feel like a rock star for a minute, and then come home and feel like a total schlep.
You mentioned that, you questioned if we'd still be here talking if things kind of went differently. And I'm going to make a reference here to your Minotaur days, Minotaur being, of course, the band that was pre-Harem Scarum, in that, for a while you were, opening for Anvil, cut 2 decades later, and then Anvil has that documentary made about them, and it kind of reignites attention into them. Is there ever a day where we get a Harem Scarum documentary?
That's a crazy question. I've never actually thought about that. I think someone would have to care enough and be wanting to spearhead such a thing, because it's not on our radar. I mean, we don't consider ourselves, I don't know, whatever, you can't judge anything these days. If somebody wanted to do one, I guess we could talk about it. But I would be shocked. Like I said, we can only build it this big. You know what I mean? We have fans around the world, but it's not huge, and it is what it is. And I don't know that we're documentary worthy, but hey, who knows? Never say never, man. I don't know if I would have thought that might have happened for Anvil either, and it did, because the right guy believed in them at the right time. He was involved with them, Sasha, and ended up doing that. So you never know. Never say never. Life's weird.
Now, to anyone who's listening to this podcast and maybe not be as familiar with your work in either Smoke and Ashes or Harem Scarum or any of the other, recordings that you've performed on, if you had to put together the Pete Lesperance sampler of 5 songs of, doesn't matter who, whose song it is, as long as you're on it, 5 songs that you would give to someone to say, okay, you know what, you want to hear some of my favorite performances, here it is.
Oh, wow. That's tough. That's really tough because you're asking me to judge myself. There's a whole lot of self-loathing going on here. No, I don't know. I mean, I think if you wanted to hear me play guitar, I'd point out a Harem Scarum song, maybe No Justice or something. Or, some of the Smoke and Ashes stuff I'm really proud of as far as what we've done for songwriting. Man, that's a really hard question. Honestly, I don't know. I've done, I'm not sounding a dick, but I've done so much. I've played so much on so many records. Harem Scarum, we've done 180 songs or something. It's like, I don't even remember most of them. Harry and I will have phone conversations, and one of us will bring up a title of a song, and we'll be, whose is that? It's like, that's ours. How's it go? I don't know. Because we never listen to our records. At the second it's done, it's over. I never hear it again unless we need to, or play it.
That's always, kind of fascinating me in that when you're putting a set list together for a tour, obviously, you've got the songs that kind of usually get played. And then, I know you guys try to keep the set list fairly diverse as far as the catalog goes. When you're getting ready for a tour, is it hard to sometimes go back and find some of those songs and then almost have to relearn some of them?
Oh God, yeah. We relearn everything. I've got a woodshed for weeks, like for a couple of weeks, get my playing back on, because I'm a perfectionist and I don't make the shit up live. I play exactly what's on the record solo wise. And frankly, I don't play guitar like that unless I'm working on a Harem Scarum record, period. So even though what I'm doing in country still has some facility to it, it's a very different, it's just such a different animal. So I really got to get back in that headspace, just like writing. We just have to get back in the Harem Scarum mode, and return to that thing. But, yeah.
You mentioned,
did I answer the question?
I think you kind of got around it, but that's okay. You mentioned that Smoke and Ashes has an EP. When can we expect that to hit the shelves?
Well, luckily we're independently, so we don't even know that yet. We're as far as shelves, I don't even think there's going to be any sort of release as far as something physical, though we're probably going to do a run of vinyl. We'll do a short run of vinyl just to do a bunch of giveaways and some stuff like that. It's going to start coming out in January. We don't even know yet if we're going to drop the whole thing at once or just drop some singles at a time, trying to just lead up to the summer when we get the band together and try to go out and do some playing.
You're listening to the Major Mixtape Podcast. Our guest today, Pete Lesperance, guitarist from Harem Scarum and one half of Smoke and Ashes. We're going to take a break for a quick little second. When we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Pete.
What's up, Combat Crew? Matt here from the Mortal Kombat Podcast, and I wanted to take a second to let you all know that on Friday, December 17th, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific Time, we will be hosting our annual charity stream live at twitch.tv/naturalhatrick. That's NTRLHATTRICK. And this year, we will be raising funds for Heart Support and their mission to make mental health care more accessible for all. We will be playing a custom 5e D&D game where your donations directly affect the game. You can cast creatures to battle our heroes, cast spells for or against them, buy a mystery token to put down the Plinko board, or summon a mighty dragon. And we are setting out to raise $1,000, and we would love to have you come hang out and have some fun with us. And as an added bonus, if we make our goal of $1,000, the folks from the podcast will be doing the One Chip Challenge live on that stream. Seriously, Google it. It's pretty wicked. Hope to see you all there on Friday, December 17th, starting at 4 p.m. Pacific Time.
Welcome back to the Major Mixtape Podcast. Our guest today, Pete Lesperance from Harem Scarum and Smoke and Ashes. Now, Pete, we mentioned earlier that first band, Minotaur.
Yes.
I'm going to bring you back to those days. What was the sound of Minotaur?
Well, we've been called. I think I don't know if it's the second or the first wave of British metal. So we were compared to bands like the early Iron Maiden, even our singer at the time, Kevin Dove, he was a lot of times compared to Paul Di'Anno. We played metal. We played like that kind of metal. We like listened to Saxon. We listened to, the Denim and Leather days, right? It was really, I guess it was early 80s, and that's what was happening.
And then how did, Harem Scarum form from there?
Well, to be totally honest, I think at some point I just felt like what I was doing ran its course. I mean, Kevin and I, who passed away last Christmas, unfortunately, we started the band. We started our band, if you want to call it that. We started playing together when we were 8 years old. So it was pretty crazy. And then we just continued playing together, and then it turned into a band. And next thing you know, we're playing this little metal band when we're like 13 and starting to do things. And then we end up getting letters from our parents when we're 16 to go on the road with Anvil and all this crazy stuff. So yeah, anyway, I just felt at that point, I was 19, and I kind of felt like we had done everything we were going to do. It was just time for a big change in my life. And I heard of Harry through a producer friend of mine, Jeff Delzeal, who I work with all the time. He's another Sharp 9 producer. And he was working with Harry at the time too. And he brought me into the fold, and Harry was a great songwriter. He was, he had a lot going on. He had just come from Fanshawe. I liked his headspace. He was looking for a record deal. He wasn't looking to screw around. He wasn't trying to do covers. He just wanted to get it happening. And it just felt like the right move for me. So Harry and I started working together, and that was kind of it. We got Darren in the band. Harry had worked with Darren previously in Blind Vengeance. And Mike Giannette was a bass player in our area. And we got the band together.
Whenever someone, goes out to learn an instrument, there's always something that influences them, or at least, the spark of inspiration that makes them want to pick up an instrument. So for you, who were some of those early guitar influences for you?
Really, it was a lot of the standard guys you would expect. It was Van Halen, it was Angus Young, even in the early days, Randy Rhoads, Steve Vai, Nuno Bettencourt. When you say the early days, that's getting into my 20s. But I was a rock guy. I was a rock guitar player, and that's what I liked, and that's where I cut my teeth. Like, that was everything to me. So those were my guys.
One thing I've always noticed too about your guitar lines that you write for those songs is that the little guitar fills that you add in, they're almost lyrics unto themselves. How did that come about? Or is that just like a natural, this is how you hear it in your own head?
I think that's it. I don't know how else to, quantify anything like that. I think everybody just hears me. Everybody that can create music, it's all in their head. And constantly it's just a matter of breaking down the barriers between your head and your hands, stopping you from doing what you're hearing in your head, for me anyway. So yeah, obviously there's early influences, and funny enough, I think a lot of my earliest influences that affected my rock playing were things like the Eagles. But it was more about the way and the placement of their fills and how tasty they were, and how I love that. I love the way that the guitar would drop in Hotel California at certain spots. And I was always intrigued by that. And I started out recording a lot on 4-track, just a lot of instrumental guitar music, because I wasn't a songwriter of any note at that time. So I was just writing all this instrumental guitar stuff. And I think I just really got into, instead of singing, I was doing melody on guitar all the time. So it still had to be catchy. It still had to sound like something, So I don't know. I guess a combination of all those things, but I think you just have it in you. I think I play dobro the same way I play guitar. I really do. I think it sounds the same to me. I'm not as good on one as I am on the other, but I still think it comes off the same,
There comes a point in everyone's, young life that for the first time they go to a record store with their own money and they buy an album for themselves. Not get one for Christmas or a birthday gift, but you actually go purposely to buy an album for yourself. Do you remember the first time you bought an album?
Like it was yesterday. It was Kiss Destroyer.
A lot of our musical influences usually comes from the music that's around us as we're growing up, what your parents listened to, and then, so knowing that, you started in Minotaur as far as, musical playing, what was the music around the house, and did that influence that?
Well, no, definitely not. The music around the house was country. That's it. I listened to country because my dad listened to country and was a country guitar player. Not of any note, but he was a country guitar player. It was a 5-chord kind of, learn all the hit songs and play them around the campfire. And so I was around that all the time. I was exposed to a lot of country music. And I think that's where it really kind of inserted itself in me when I didn't even know it. Of course, at a certain age, you want to break out of that. And Kiss was really the thing that did it for me, They were the first album I bought, and they were the first concert my parents took me to when I was 11 in 1979. I went and saw the Dynasty tour, and I went, I want to do that for a living. That looks like fun. So that was it.
Maybe minus the makeup.
Well, yeah, at the time, I don't know if I felt that way.
You mentioned that, even before the Harem Scarum days, you knew Jeff Dalzell, and of course you and Harry Hess have worked together for a number of years upon decades. It seems that your musical orbit has been able to include some of the same people throughout your career. How important is that, to have basically your friends be also your musical family?
Oh, it's the best. It's the best part. It really is. I mean, it's the most important thing because, this business is, what it is, and everyone knows that. And we're all doing it despite that, regardless of what everyone's saying or trying to look like they're doing on Instagram. This is a tough burn, for everybody. So yeah, to have your buddies got your back, and I'm on FaceTime with Jeff like 2-3 times a day. We're talking about whatever project he's doing for me or I'm doing for him, or, it's just involves it's their family. They're guys I've known my whole life. And funny enough, they've all been successful enough in the music industry because they're all really good at it. And they're still here, and I'm still here, and we get to do it. It's friggin' amazing.
It comes to the point of the show where we have to kind of put you on the spot here. So, Pete, if you had to introduce yourself to a total stranger, but instead of saying, "Hi, I'm Pete," you may have heard my music, you hand them a mixtape, and on that tape are songs that tell the story of you. What songs are on that tape, and why are those songs there?
Okay. Well, I did this last night, and it's quite a long list, and it gives you a cross section. But I'm gonna start out by saying that I started my time as a music listener and into my early development as a real music lover, and I really loved things and wanted to go after it and find it and listen to it. That all went away at some point. At some point, music became not that I don't love amazing music. Of course, I'm brought to tears by the right song at the right time, easily, but it really became less of a spectator sport for me at some time, and just became more about playing and sitting around with a guitar rather than listening to music. If I'm going to listen to it, I'd rather be playing it. So music kind of at some point in my life became a bit of a background thing that way. That being said, I'll get to my list if you want. So I probably one of the first songs I even remember ever hearing was Country Roads by John Denver, because as I was saying, my dad was a big country guy. And I still love it. I still, that kind of country, I still love old school country. It's my favorite. It's the country I really love. And When Will I Be Loved by Linda Ronstadt is another one that kind of rings that bell for me. CCR, My Back Door, is a song that was on my dad's workout tape when I was a kid, along with Jet Airliner by the Steve Miller Band. Help by the Beatles. I was huge into the Beatles for a long time. I still love the Beatles, obviously, watching the show and all. Hell's Bells by AC/DC. One of the first songs I can actually remember trying to learn that part, which I learned completely wrong, but I learned it by ear and it was fun. So that has some kind of effect. That was right when the Back in Black record came out, Rock. I was like, ooh, this sounds cool. This is different. Death on Two Legs by Queen, because I loved that album in particular, but I loved Brian May. I loved his playing. Actually, I never mentioned Brian May, but he was a huge influence on me as well. Ain't Talking About Love by Van Halen. I still say to this day, every single time I sit down to write a riff for a Harem Scarum song, all I'm trying to do is write something as cool, catchy, and memorable as Ain't Talking About Love. So that's on my list. Crazy Train, that was my first. I remember I bought my first distortion pedal because my guitar teacher at the time told me that that's what made that sound. That's what made the guitar sound like that, fuzzy. And so Crazy Train was a big one for me. Number of the Beast, Iron Maiden. That was the first metal album I got into. In that world lives Green Man Alicia, which I just loved Priest's writing. I thought they were amazing at the time. Hysteria by Def Leppard. The Attitude Song by Steve Vai, because I figured I got to throw in one instrumental. And Steve, he was a pretty big influence on me for a minute, for sure. Do You Want to Play by Extreme, for the same reason. The guitar playing was just absolutely insane. Stuff I could never even aspire to, but I used to listen to it and it would just freak me out. Intuition by TNT. Absolutely love Ronnie Latecro. He's one of my favorite guitar players. I ripped him off all over the place, did all kinds of shit, tried to copy the way he played. I loved his playing. And then after that, things kind of go sideways. So they can't take that away from me, from Louie and Ella. If It Makes You Happy by Sheryl Crow. That's kind of where I started getting into the Americana side of things. Gotta Love by Alana Davis. She's just a brilliant singer, and it was a song for mine and my wife's wedding. So that one's on there. And then Slow Dancing in a Burning Room by John Mayer, who became probably my most favorite artist of the last 15 years. And then Where Will I Be by Emmylou Harris.
One of the things that you've mentioned there, actually two of the things, was Brian May being an influence and a love of Extreme and Nuno Betancourt. And I want to pull out a reference here. If you remember the Freddie Mercury tribute concert, Extreme had one of the arguably, a Live Aid-esque performance of their Queen medley. Did you have a chance to see that?
Yeah, I still remember that. It was brilliant. I liked Extreme. I loved Nuno. Nuno is a genius. I even loved his solo record, Schizophonic. I thought it was amazing. I've always been a massive fan of his. He can do no wrong, really, as far as I'm concerned. So I enjoyed that immensely. Yeah.
As you continue to play on other people's records and put out your own stuff as well, what's more satisfying to you as a guitarist or even as a songwriter, to have one of your own songs hit on the radio, or to have a song that you performed on make a hit and then help somebody else elevate?
Well, I would say definitely the first. Anything you're involved with, you just have a personal connection to. I mean, I love what I'm doing, and I love that I get to make music and help these people with their, not help them, but be involved in their projects. You know what I mean? I love that. It's great. But yeah, there's nothing like doing it yourself. I mean, that's the reason I started the Smoke and Ashes thing again. It's like, clearly I'm not done trying to do it. So yeah, man, I don't know. I've never had, any kind of incredible success. I'm not going to sit here and pretend. So I'll let you know if it ever happens. But it's all good, man. I just love making music, and I get to do a lot of it all the time. And I just feel super fortunate, and I'm surrounded by a bunch of great, talented people, and everyone's supportive, and the vibes are all good. And yeah, man, it's really good times in music for me right now. I'm not going to lie.
Obviously, with hopefully things starting to eventually get back to a way of normal, all things hopeful, if you can try and picture that first moment getting up on stage again, what are going to be some of the thoughts that go through your mind?
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends what I'm doing. If I'm standing there with an acoustic guitar next to Aaron and we're doing something, it's one thing. And if it's Harem Scarum, it's another animal. It's Harem Scarum is tricky because it's a lot of thinking. It just is. It's a lot of prep, a lot of thinking. And the problem is we never got to play a lot. So once you play a lot as a band, even if the stuff's tricky, you get really good at it. Usually by the time our tour is just ending, we're really good at it, So it really depends what we'd be doing, But I think I'm just going to be excited to be playing again. Like I said, I don't feel I've done nearly enough of that in my life, and I'm still looking forward to doing a lot more of it. So.
Pete, thank you so much for this. Where can we find you out there on the internet, and where can we hear most of your music?
Most of the music you can find, I think Harem Scarum is on Spotify. Spotify has everything. I mean, everything I'm doing, Smoke and Ashes is up there. All my solo stuff is up there. A good chunk of the Harem Scarum stuff is up there. You can find me at PeteLesperance.com, sharp9music.com. That's my management. Yeah. I'm all over the place. I'm hard to miss after 30 years.
Pete, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for this. And to our listeners, thank you for listening to this episode of the Made You a Mixtape podcast. Now, if you're listening to us on an audio streaming service, you can watch this entire interview over on YouTube. But if you're watching us on YouTube right now, don't be jealous about the instruments at Pete's place. But you can download this episode on any of your audio streaming services, wherever you get your podcasts, and listen to us on the go. Until next time, I'm Jason. This is Made You a Mixtape. Take care.
Thanks, Jason.